All righty. Hello, everybody. We got numbers pouring in. Every 3 seconds, we got another 20 people joining. So we're going to hang out for just a couple minutes and let people finish logging in so that we can get started here. Thanks for joining us. This is Scan to BIM session number 2 of our 3-part webinar series.
And just to do a holdover from last one, I have to ask everybody what they're drinking today, because apparently that was quite an interesting topic of conversation last time. What do we got there? Cup of Joe for Jake.
I got my Dutch Bros coffee. Little plug.
Good old upstate New York spring water.
Oh man, you're so healthy. It makes me sick. I've got my usual Dr. Pepper in my Whataburger insulated cup, you know.
That's it. I couldn't tell if that was a Wonder Woman cup or
sippy cup.
I mean, it could be. There's a W on both sides, right? Wonder Woman. But
I wish I had time to say hi to everybody who's logging in. I see so many of you that we know. It's nice having friends on here watching and hanging out with us too.
Yeah,
hello, everybody.
Ken Peters informed us that he's also having coffee, so thank you for that, Ken. Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious, yeah, we're still cranking in here. Let's give it another 60 seconds and we'll get started. But
so on that same topic, just from the other week, was doing a podcast with Brewing with BIM, and the drink of that day was Purple Monkey dishwasher. Believe it or not. Anybody ever heard that term?
Nope.
Can't say I have.
I've got some Golden Monkey in my beer fridge, but it's just a little early for that.
I had to look that up, and apparently it's a kind of a catchphrase used for the old like the telephone game, where you tell somebody something and it goes around the room until it comes back around, and then in the end it turns out you just say Purple Monkey dishwasher. And they use that on The Simpsons to kind of reinvigorate it a while back, and they picked up on that as far as the brewery goes, and so they named their beer Purple Monkey Dishwasher.
So I think the drink of the day today is I just saw this out of the corner of my eye, and it said Central America tap water, and my initial reaction was "You're brave," but this is coming from Panama, and I've been to Panama, and you know, obviously different countries have different infrastructure qualities. So I saw the Panama, and I got a lot less worried. But I mean, obviously everybody there drinks the tap water, but I'm like, oh, goodness. All right.
All righty. Yeah, I think we're a couple minutes in. People are still pouring in, but out of respect for everybody's time, we're going to get started. So thanks again for joining us. We are excited to talk to you guys today on the second of our 3-part series on laser scanning, point clouds, BIM modeling. We've got our guests today, Greg and Jacob, with Kelly and myself. We're excited. So we're going to get started, and we'll start by Kelly's going to go over some of the kind of just rules for today's webinar, and then we'll move into introductions.
All righty. Let me see if I can actually get my slide deck to advance now. That was nice and fast. All right, so yeah, housekeeping stuff for today. Obviously, all of our wonderful participants are muted. The last one of these, we had just under 500 people live, which is awesome. But that means we can't have everybody unmuted and hear all of your work from home cacophony all at the same time. Just the 4 of us is enough work from home cacophony as is. You know, please ask questions in the chat. You know, keep it going. We do want to make this a nice dialogue. You know, Matt's watching the questions as we're all going, and I will as well. So if something comes up, we'll jump right on it. And I do agree the water in Panama is great. Yes, been following that. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session. Some of them, last time we got like 100 questions. We answered as many as we could. We may run a little over during Q&A if there's a lot of great questions. But Never fear, if you have an obligation, you need to jump out early, something else happens, your child runs into the room and requires your attention, it's all being recorded, including the Q&A. So, and the questions we don't get to, we actually just posted this morning. Matt and I hopped on and answered the rest of the questions in a little video that we've posted in a LinkedIn group. And there's a LinkedIn group for ScandiBIM University now because we had so many people asking for a place to continue the conversation. So, hey, check that out on LinkedIn. Just ask to join, we'll add you. And we'll send out a link for that recording in about a week so that everybody can, download it, pass it around, get more people interested that want to. Yeah, I think that's most of it. We'll probably get some more questions about that during the Q&A session. So with that, let's do introductions, and let's start with the inimitable Greg Hale.
All right, thanks, Kelly. So yeah, a little introduction to myself. Been in the industry since 2000, come out of school. Worked a bit in structural steel fabrication and erection for several years, switched over to structural engineering until I got my engineering professional license. Worked a few more years and transitioned to essentially a BIM manager for several years for a multidiscipline architecture and engineering firm. Started to work with scan data around 2008 with some brave souls that were using some early equipment, and really kind of put the feet to the fire there for several years using that scan data. And eventually, there were some other players that came to the market in 2013 and 14. Saw some opportunity to provide scanning services as well as BIM services. Started my own company called Hale Technology in Practice in 2014, focusing in on 3D laser scanning, on BIM consulting, really everything that kind of revolves around the AEC technology industry. So a lot of times people call us now the construction technologist, is essentially a profession now. And that is essentially what we do. And kind of privy to what we're talking about today, we also provide Scan-to-BIM training and services. So kind of unlike many other players out there, we actually give away the secret sauce constantly to help others like our audience today, get into the business.
And what's PEAC? I actually don't know that acronym.
So that was Professional Engineers and Architects in Construction. So we had, it was a Peak Design Technology Group, basically a local organization that helped all these groups to come together because, as we know, they're pretty adversarial groups between engineers, architects, and builders. So we tried to form an organization that kind of brings those groups together and then establish technology as kind of a foundation for a lot of new tasks. So been kind of active in the community, and that is one of the groups that we help out with.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, let's hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jacob Dalbora. I'm the Director of BIM and FM Services for McVeigh Mangum Engineering. So basically, I run a business unit that focuses on 3 different verticals. We got 3D scanning, the VDC services, and then now the BIM integrated facility management deliverable, aka digital twin, as everybody has heard already. Much like Greg, I've kind of made that journey through the design side into the construction side. Started as an architect, worked through that whole arena, BIM manager there, and then about almost 4 years ago now started this business unit with McVeigh Mangum. So we've now kind of pushing all this, and I'm going to actually agree with Greg is that the giving away the secret sauce is almost a must right now. It's, hey, there's so much opportunity out there that the education of this is actually better for us than trying to hoard it and keep it together. So more and more as the industry grows, it's just going to be better for all of us. And I think you actually see 3 out of the 4 people on this could be considered competing companies in these arenas, and it doesn't matter. There's so much opportunity. There's, we're here to actually make it better. And obviously, as Kelly has there on the last bullet point, I was a CDC statistic as the first case of West Nile in North Carolina. So I am okay now, so don't have to worry about that or anything, but I will stay remote.
There you go.
West Nile is so last year, man.
Yeah, 2020 has trumped that.
Oh man, I'm just gonna leave that alone.
All right.
Bad joke.
Moving on.
Well, thanks, guys. Those are our two guests today. And of course, those of you who attended the first already know myself and Kelly, so I'll keep our introduction short. My name is Matthew. I got started as opposed to the engineering and design and background. I got started in the field side in land surveying. So really coming from working with total stations GPS, conventional, survey projects, layout, construction staking, that type of stuff. Got into laser scanning in about 2010. And honestly, the year we found scanning, my entire focus shifted from pursuing survey long-term to just, oh my gosh, this is a new technology that's so useful to so many people. Since that day, my focus has been 100% on laser scanning, new technologies, how can we use the point clouds? How can we create models for different industries? So we really focus on the technology, the reality capture side, and then the implementation of that to all industries, as opposed to, just engineering, just construction, just forensics, we really try to hit all of those. And like has already been said, we really don't see anybody in the industry as a competition. We really try to be a support and collaborative with everybody because we see a lot of need out there. The industry is growing. So we're doing the best we can to try to educate potential clients as well as companies that can be using it, getting into it, and then trying to make connections between ourselves, other partners that we have to be able to help support projects all around the country. So that's been our focus.
All righty. And likewise, I'll keep myself short here. Kelly Cohn, ClearEdge 3D, started scanning stuff in 2006, back when I was working at the Bet Group, which is a design build firm here in Texas, well, all over the US. And kind of used that, really drove the adoption of VDC technologies within the company for a couple of years, along with some wonderful, wonderful counterparts. And we kind of pulled that all together into a wonderful nationwide VDC group, which I had the privilege of leading, and fantastic experience. I remember my first scans, I was using a C10 and it took like 45 minutes for the quickest scan. And then by the time I left, we were using, a P20, which, the scans that used to take us 45 minutes took a minute and a half. And it just, changed. It's amazing to see how much the technology changed even in, the 7 years that I was scanning regularly. And then I joined ClearEdge. To try and bring some software to the industry to help meet some of the challenges that we were seeing day to day. Yeah, so awesome. with that, let's stop this silly screen stuff. And let's start diving into the topics. Now we've got a couple things we want to hit today. The 101 class was, I think, fantastic. We had oodles of questions. But we didn't get, I think, much into the modeling side, so we don't want to make that same mistake today. But we do want to kind of start with some field practice stuff because there were some really great tips that I think are appropriate for a 201 class that we got from our wonderful guests. And so, Jacob, I actually want you to kick us off and tell us a little bit about what you're doing in terms of trying to make sure that you guys actually have some really good planning practices and know what you're getting into in the field when you're starting out jobs.
Yeah, there's two sides to that, and it's the the site information actually being there, but also the second side is the client and what are they looking for. It's really about planning, but also understanding what they are looking for, because we've gone through numerous projects, and anybody that has been involved in the scanning industry has gotten to a client that wants the real thing, that wants it down to nuts and bolts accurate, and then the client that wants something that's usable for a design model. So it's a matter of what you're looking for and who you're talking with, but you always got to understand that their knowledge is not there, and that's what Matt was saying, is how we increase everybody's knowledge in this industry. So you have to actually talk through it. I think Matt was actually saying it's through tons of conversation with the client to figure out what they want. And I mean, we use a online form. We can send it to a potential client. We actually do it to do the quotes and proposals for it. So we have them fill out this form that really gets it. Yeah, and this is what it is.
Yeah, you step in on it, so yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously it's a basic Microsoft Forms online. We can get the email when it's done being filled out. And we actually have it set up to fee schedules that allows us to actually start putting fees to this. But there's some site information like this one here. It becomes really important, and stuff like active power, active lighting, is it abandoned? Uh, we have sent teams in to buildings that have squatters, and we didn't know that beforehand. And it's all of a sudden that, like, okay, what do I do now? So getting this information beforehand, and then also the scope of work is in this one. So scope of work, you tell me you want me to scan a building. Well, do you want the interior and exterior scanned? Do you want the roof scanned? Because that's another component of how do you get up there. That's more square footage to get a hold of. And then also, are you looking for above ceiling? Are you just looking for something like layout space? So there's a lot of this in there. And if you go one more, Kelly, we have, so I hate using the term LOD, and to Kelly, I would probably start changing this to LOA, but typical people out in the industry won't, like a normal architect's not going to understand what LOA even means. So it's, what do you want in this deliverable? So this whole thing is actually set up where it's question 16 and 19 here. We actually call it the 90-degree rule. Is this something that you're going to go and take and use for, design documents, construction documents? Because Revit doesn't dimension parallel unless the two walls are parallel. It doesn't do angled walls and stuff. So you're going to be using this for a construction document set, then we're going to provide you something that is 90 degrees at corners, that is, perpendicular to the ground, and we're going to get it as accurate as possible. Or are you actually looking for a true as-built? You need to know that it is 4'3" and 3/16 of an inch between the two walls, and that doesn't meet ADA for you. So it's a matter of getting that information up front, because it stinks when you hand the deliverable over and the client looks at you and says, well, we can't use this.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
this is the as-built. And
Yeah. And I would even just throw out this, sometimes it even comes down to wanting to try to get the client to incorporate that conversation with the whole team that's working on the job. Just as an example, we had this happen on a project where we talked with the client, which was the construction firm, about the deliverable, but then, they have subs that are going to use that model that's being delivered, right? So they've got a structural client that needs to use it, a sub that needs to use it. They've got an HVAC guy that needs to use it. They've got an architect that needs to use it. And so not having the input of the whole team on answering some of those questions after creating it, based on the construction firm's request, now these other subs are like, well, we can't, no, we need to know where that column is leaning. And it's like, well, but that's not what the construction firm wanted. Yep. And then the architect's like, wait, we're still working in 2D, yeah, so which is a little rough. But really trying to get a lot more communication on the front end of jobs with whoever that end client is, and even confirming who are they handing it to use if they're not using it internally, and trying to get some of those questions answered, so you're not reworking, you're not redoing something in a different version, you're not rechanging, angles and lean. And I think that's something that definitely needs some improvement in the industry as a whole.
I actually agree. Even internally, get a few people on the project team together to discuss it, because if it's a principal that is getting the proposal together and is going through this, they might not understand what you're saying down to the Revit techs or the project managers that are running these projects. And when you hand it over and they're sitting there thinking that they're going to get, all the bells and whistles, casework and all the lights and everything, but you just propose one item, it just creates confusion, and that conversation really can help.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I think there's two kind of aspects to that question, which I think are the most important is, what is your scope as far as asking the client, what's your scope that you're trying to accomplish? There was a reason that someone called you to 3D laser scan or provide a BIM model, and then getting beyond that and saying, what's the overall scope of the project? Because then you're looking for additional opportunities to say, well, you might have a certain use case, but we could also open this up and share that load or share that cost to a particular project for more potential uses.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like to try to get into the details of that beyond, the individual client's task and get into the overall project.
Yeah, especially when there is still the case that some clients, they take a blanket approach to say, no, we need LOD 300. And with further discussion, we might even sometimes be able to reduce the amount of work because maybe they think they need something they don't. And so by that further communication and really, like you said, Greg, analyzing even past that and say, what's really the scope? We might be able to say, okay, well, you really don't need XYZ, so let's help even reduce your cost or, make it simpler. You're asking for more than you actually want. So it can go both directions.
Yeah, and actually we've done that. So, there's probably some people on the call or on the meeting right now that are like, wait, you provide like a vanilla, model coming out of a scan. What that doesn't seem right. But what we do and the way we talk about it is if you want that to go through your construction document set, we then also have the ability to take that 3D point cloud and hand it to the contractor and have them be able to, get more accurate, get more in there, use it for your coordination process, because that information is still useful. And that's just like you said, Matt, you can, help spread the costs out if it kind of goes into different areas of the project.
I mean,
and sometimes, go ahead, Kelly.
The laser scan is like it really is like it's a set of field measurements. That is what it is, and you can use it for so many different purposes. And I think one of the things we tell users to or recommend with our software, because we have tools in our software that of course help you model things very accurately, and then we have things that help you make them less accurate and more nominalized, because that's what people usually actually want in their models. But we always recommend, hey, save it at different states. Like, don't just like save the quote unquote as built and then go through that nominalization process and then save that as a nominalized and then go through if you do additional stuff, because that model that you got at the as built, that might be really valuable for the contractor when it comes time to coordination, as opposed to the nominalized model, which is what the architect needed. So it's, thinking about this as, different states of accuracy is super duper important. So totally agree.
Yeah. And a lot of people still that don't fully understand the scanning process, the process to model from the point cloud. Some people don't understand the accuracy you can really end up with the model. And so I think sometimes there's the side where you may want to model it, to the way that's going to be best for the majority of the parties. And if there's somebody who needs really fine measurements or needs to check, then you got to, educate them on how to use maybe the point cloud directly. For instance, that same project I mentioned where, we modeled things to the 90-degree angle best fit like was asked. Then there's somebody who's trying to fabricate some, steel in between certain areas. And instead of trying to use a best fit model for that, we showed them, okay, well, we can give you a slice of the point cloud at certain locations so you can directly measure from this exact side on the wall to this exact side on the column, because that column may be leaning. So instead of taking the best fit model and assuming, from one side to the other, you can go measure those exact and get your dimensions. So there's ways to utilize the point cloud itself when you're really looking for those finer measurements than I think pulling from the model. So there may be times that you want to utilize both. And I know that's still a growing area because a lot of people, maybe aren't ready to handle a big point cloud, don't have the software, don't have the computer specs, but there's also ways that consultants and companies that are working with this data can make it more user friendly. Instead of handing you a one point cloud file of whole building, they can slice it down and export it out and give you little areas you need at a time to work with. So I think there's ways for everybody to get that benefit from the data.
Absolutely. And actually, like, I want to bring us back to this planning concept, because I think this is a critical part for fields. How many of our panelists here do a scan plan before every job, or almost every job? Yeah, everybody?
Almost every time, yeah.
I wish I had a really good picture for one, but this is one of those things where I feel like your first couple of jobs when you're a beginner, you like just gung ho, you go out in the field, you start setting the scanner up, and you just start going scanning stuff, and it's great and it's fun, and then you get back in the office and you're like, why can't I get these two things to stitch together? Why won't they work? Why is this one funny? Why I didn't get anything in that room, and that's part of the deliverable. And like, this was a point you made, and I want you to say a word or two on, Matt, which is, just never taking shortcuts in the field. But part of that is also not taking a shortcut on putting the plan together so you know what you need to do in the field. But yeah. Share a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, I think during one of our calls, I talked a little bit about a project we got hired to help register, but the overall statement was don't take shortcuts, because the little bit of extra field time to add some additional targets or add some additional setups, or a little bit extra time in the field to make sure you're getting the data you need is going to save a lot of back-end headaches of trying to make data work. One of the examples I talked about was a staircase, which is, it's not a huge building, with hundreds of scans. It was a spiral staircase across 3 levels of a building. Now, the company that scanned it was new to scanning. They had a scanner to use. They set up on floor 1, looking up the stairs, and their next setup was on floor 2, looking kind of at the staircase, and then their next setup was on floor 3, looking at the staircase. So they had no targets. The only overlap of data was this little tiny spot in the middle between each floor on the staircase. So the additional time for them to set up one more setup on the stairs and get that additional overlap would have made the data come together really easily, accurately, but instead it really took extra time to manually go take those scans and try to tweak and fit it. And so there's kind of 2 things out of that project that we tried to show them. Is one, we can register that, but you need additional setups. And 2 is, even if you do capture a project wrong, or you miss targets, or there are some like tips and tricks and tweaks you can do to fix some of those projects. So we always try to say, look, if you do run into an issue, there are still people who've walked through this before, and we're happy to try to educate or provide some feedback on how to, 1, fix it, and how to 2, avoid it in the future.
Oh, got the mute, Kelly.
And see, it happened. I told you guys it was going to happen. It's for real. You didn't even have to play a trick on me. We had a great question. Do you include in your plan the density you plan to use for each scan? And I mean, I'll share my Revit geek cred here. We do all of our, or I used to do all of our scan plans in Revit. We had a scanner family, and in the parameters, you could set the parameters. And then I had a schedule, and it would actually tell you field hours. And so it had all the padding in there for setup. I could check a box if it was a wheeled cart or if it wasn't a wheeled cart. So basically I had this little thing that I could just place down, bring in a PDF or bring in a model, pop all the scan locations, everything was done, and then I could print that out and hand it to guys in the field. It was super slick. But yes, that's absolutely part of it, because that's how I count the time. How many days do we need in the field? The density matters.
Kelly, do you think you can let me share a screen real quick? I've got an example up that I can show.
Oh, absolutely. Making you a presenter, and then I think we will hop on to our next topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
You are, I think, Greg, you should, hello, make presenter. Yes, I really do mean it, GoToMeeting. Yes, you are presenting, sir.
Okay, what do you see in there?
NWF.
See Houseworks or Bluebeam?
Now Bluebeam.
Navisworks. Now Bluebeam. There we go.
Okay.
Now.
So
Hey,
yeah,
that's
Perfect.
to this, here's a building. Bluebeam is great because you can just go ahead and throw basically a counting tool for a number of scans. And to that point of the question, we've got different colors or different numbers for different basically resolutions of scan. They're going to take a little bit longer of a time or a little shorter, and then basically just a count or takeoff here of how many of these 225 long scans, 225 short scans, about the amount of time, do a little total, figure out how much field time you have. So it's kind of a somewhat rudimentary, but to everybody's point, like doorways is kind of being a critical thing. Like, do we really need 20 scans down a hallway? Yes, not for the data, but to actually pull things all together. So, knowing you have to take a scan in front of every door, starts to add up a lot of that time when you look at it and say, well, square footage isn't that big, but you have to have a lot of setups in order to basically traverse through the space. So scan plan is definitely a great idea going into a job, and we typically do a comparison of scan plan versus a kind of a standard square footage cost and work them back and forth to say, where do we really feel it falls in line? It's usually a combination of the two.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about the setups needed when they're first getting started in scanning. They think about, oh wait, I'm using a scanner that can reach 70 meters away. So, we've seen so many projects like that, like Greg's talking about right there in that hallway. A lot of people are like, well, I just need one on each end of the hallway because I can see, from one end to the other. Your problem is you're only getting a couple surfaces that far away. So aligning that data accurately is going to be really difficult. And then two, you don't have those doorways to get into the restrooms, to get into so when you're doing your scan plan, whether it's an interior or an exterior, you really have to think about the two sides. One, can you see the data on the objects you're going to need to model? And then secondly, which is probably the cause of more setups, is can I see enough overlap or targets overlapping to register this room back to the other data properly?
And that is a perfect segue for our next topic, because we hit on this very briefly in the 101 class, but I want to talk about hybrid registrations and why it's so important and why it's so beneficial in so many ways, because I think this is a great example, because I think it's really hard, I think, for beginners, even intermediate people that been doing it for a year or two, to really understand how the cloud-to-cloud algorithms and how some of these black box functions in the software work. Whereas things like targets, I think, are a lot easier to understand. And we got a ton of questions in the last one about, should I use targets, or should I use cloud-to-cloud, or should I use survey control? And we kept hammering that, well, the answer is yes. You should use all three on most jobs, and there's always little exceptions, right? But like, the reality is cloud to cloud has strengths and weaknesses. Targets have strengths and weaknesses in terms of their accuracy. Survey control has strengths and weaknesses in terms of its accuracy. I mean, I've been on a job with a 20-foot survey control bust, right? So if you rely on only one of those things, you will almost invariably, on any job of any size, run into a situation where that one thing fails miserably and you are left holding the bag. And this is shortcuts. Goes back to field shortcuts. You just hang targets, because if you don't need them and the cloud to cloud all works, great. It took you probably no extra time to slap a couple targets up. But if you need them, they're there, and it really makes you think. And this, the biggest benefit I've seen for like my field teams that are fresh, newer field teams, making them hang targets makes them think about how they have to get from one room to another room. And so they end up they don't make that mistake of a scan at two ends of the hallway, because they think, oh, I've got to put a target here. And then they think, oh, well, if I've got to put a target here, I've got to probably put the scanner here too, because that's how I connect these.
Yeah, and while we have it open, Greg, maybe you want to talk through even the one you're looking at here. What would be your plan regarding targeting or the processing side of that floor plan there?
Yeah, so this is actually a great example for this particular case. You can see kind of right in the middle, we've got a set of clean rooms, and that's a kind of a customer requirement that when you go into those clean rooms, you really don't want to bring targets with you. So that's all the many more things to clean and set up going in, as well as all the other additional things going on. We actually scanned this during operations, and there were a lot of people moving in and out of there in those clean rooms. So additional targets can also be not only is it a clean room, but it's an active space with a lot of people moving around it. We decided to do all of those cloud to cloud. That was something we kind of anticipated going in, but had to verify with the client, what level of clean room and those kinds of things. So that entire area was all cloud to cloud, but in between, like in this packaging, a central area, which was not a clean room, that's all targeted, and the rest of the building was all targeted. We found our registration process just goes a lot faster and easier. Do that. So like everything in green is essentially all targeted. We had kind of a mix match hybrid of targeted and cloud to cloud. It just really depended upon where we were at, what the activity was. And, we've had other cases where just the matter of time can come into play. We've been in schools where they say, you know what, school's in session. We actually have to switch things around, and this gymnasium is going to be taken up in an hour. Can you get through this in an hour? Like, oh crap, we better get going. We don't have time to set up targets. Let's go, 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 and fire up cloud to cloud. So you have to be ready to kind of switch and know what you do. And as you come out of it, taking those notes for something like this as a scan map in the field, saying, okay, in this area, this is how I scanned it, and I planned on doing cloud to cloud registration here versus, doing targeted. And then also, we tend to have areas, I don't think I have it on this map, where we call our critical tie locations. And those are usually central areas, or like those narrow hallways where, this one door is your only access from this entire side of the building to this entire side of the building. And if you mess up this one little corridor, nothing else works.
Yeah.
So, we'll often highlight those areas and say, take cloud to cloud, take targeted, do it all, just in case.
Yeah. And doing the field notes, whoever it is that's scanning, becomes really helpful when you're in a situation like this project Greg is showing, and you have different areas of the building you had to change targeting or change methods, or or even marking your scan locations. Because what happens when you come back with 300 scans that are all in order, if you didn't change naming, and one won't place, and you're like, I don't remember, I can't even figure out where this scan places or where it goes or how I fit it in. So having that field documentation is really helpful. And for those, guys that are out there scanning, or your scan techs, there is time to do it. It is a little bit of a hassle to carry around a paper and do some of these notes. But once you set the scanner up and it's running for 3 minutes, you have time to make these notes, and it's a worthwhile thing. Again, talking about don't shortcut yourself in the field, because if you don't, you're going to spend 5 times the amount of time back in the office trying to figure out what happened, what scans had control, what didn't, so don't shortcut yourself in the field. I would like to answer a couple questions, just because we have a bunch pouring in, if that's okay, that are around these topics. So let's start with this one. Do you do any scanning without targets? I have a survey team that prefers not to use them, since the software can register scans without them. So that question, it kind of falls within, honestly, if you haven't seen it, I'd watch the first webinar that we did. We really went in depth into survey control, into targeting, into not targeting. It really comes down to what scanner are you using, what size is your project, what type of accuracy do you need. There's a lot of factors, I would say, that plays into how much targeting you use or don't use. And you even look at this example of Greg's, of there's times that you can or can't even use them based on, do you have limited access? But if you're using them for survey as well, I would say it really does come down to what scanner are you using. Can you set the scanner up on control? Do you need targets or not? Is it exterior? What type of site features do you have? Anybody else want to give some input on that question?
Kelly, if you can actually make me presenter real quick. Yes, the technology has gotten to the point where the scan to scan on site is excellent, but there's so many different things that make it. Can you guys see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
where you're going.
All right. It's fantastic, right? The technology's there, but it doesn't also realize some of the things. So this is a big warehouse distribution center, and you would think this is going to be the easiest scan in the world, and this is going to be the easiest thing to register. But what you don't know is that computer, that little software package is recognizing these columns, but it's overlaying them back and forth on each other. So all of a sudden you're getting, you know, the column line that was on J is actually showing up on K also. And you don't realize it, but it's such an accurate footprint and setting going from bay to bay that the accuracy count on the scanner says, oh, this is perfect layout. So we can skip, you know, it starts skipping those bays. That's where you need to start realizing, all right, I need, you know, control, and I need the spheres, and I need targets. I mean, it's just a matter of it's great, but then it also comes back in. And I think one of those comments we had during the pre-show was, whatever that report says at the end, throw it out the window. It's great. Yeah, fantastic. It's green. But that doesn't mean that it's accurate, because I think this one you can even see right here on the left is these two columns. Does that look like they're lined up? It doesn't look like it's lined up
Yeah.
to me, because this is, you know, you would think this is such an easy big box to register, but if it did it automatically, this is this kind of stuff that we ended up getting back. So
Yeah. And
Right.
I'll even throw out
Oh.
one thing just on this, you know, type of project even. A lot of people don't understand, even if you're using cloud to cloud, it doesn't mean you just scan a project, hit a button, and it's done.
yeah.
There are workflows and things you can do to even help that process. So looking at this project right here, instead of just dumping your scans in and doing the whole building and trying to register it, this is where that field planning that Greg is showing and marking your locations could become helpful, because depending on the software you're using to register, you know, what you could do is you could break out and separate the scans that go down one entire column run, put those in their own folder, and cloud to cloud those together, because then it knows, okay, I only have these 10 scans, so obviously this is the layout. And then you could do that with the next row, but you have to know that back in the office based on your scan locations or your scan map to know what scans go together. You know, so you could piecemeal it, but it's a lot more work in the office than just hitting cloud to cloud. You got to separate those out. You got to register individual clusters. You got to try to bring two of those together. Then you got to get the third. And then you have to make sure, you know, so there is a lot of manual work, even with cloud to cloud, depending on the size and type of the project.
The magic register button rarely works in most spaces. It's only in very simple, very geometrically unique spaces. I mean, I think in the first webinar I mentioned I think I mentioned a project that we had done where we scanned a mall during Christmas with a Faro scanner, and there were literally like 800 spheres hanging from the ceiling. They're called ornaments, and the software thought they were all targets. On the flip side, we had a project somebody thought they'd cloud to cloud register, and it was a building. All of the interior spaces were circles. No way to cloud register that. There's no way for the software to find features that match up. It rotates everything randomly. Like literally the job was completely unusable. Like they had to go back and scan with targets, redo the whole thing over again. And it was just like, yeah, little things like that matter. We had this great question about, you know, wouldn't the use of indoor of mobile mapping solve the problem? And I think just for a quick answer, because there's a couple people that have kind of pegged that, mobile mapping solutions are much less accurate in terms of their local accuracy on surfaces. So if you don't need to know where the column is down to the 1/8 of an inch, it might. But if you need to know where the column is down to the 1/8 of an inch, not a good solution. So there's you know, there's definitely times and places for the right tool. And we talked about that a lot in the first webinar. So if you missed it, go back and watch that. But I want us to modeling, man. We're running out of time. So I know you want to answer a question, Matt, but I want us to jump to modeling, because otherwise we're not going to get there again. So let's, if it's all right with everybody, let's talk about QA/QC. As I try and keep it short, and then let's roll into modeling for the last 10 minutes, and we'll keep pulling some questions. But I think if I recall correctly, Greg, you had a great story about some of the stuff that you guys are doing for QA/QC in terms of you're actually putting together documents just as a mechanism for QA/QC.
Yeah, so this is somewhat unusual. We've kind of found this gap at the end of a scan to BIM project. So we go through all of our paces for scanning and then coming up with a great model. And kind of what an architect or an engineer is used to seeing is a set of plans, and those plans have the annotation on it, which tells you this is a duct and it's a 12 by 24 inch duct. So when we typically provide a model, that model is the model, and you have to click on that duct in order to find out what it is. So as a matter of kind of getting closer to a deliverable or something that a client is used to as far as seeing that two-dimensional documentation, we'll go through as part of our QC process and start to lay out things like pipe diameters, elevations off the floor, dimensions off column grids, things like that that are more typically in documentation. And then you will provide that as part of the Revit model. It's not necessarily final documentation. It's like, hey, this was what the building was, just like the original design document. But then we'll also kind of lay out a report for that. So, sending out a report saying, here's not only the model, but kind of what we found in that. So whether it's floor level analysis or, just honestly, a bunch of pretty pictures really helps get them a sense of, here's everything that's included in the architectural model. Here's everything that's included in the plumbing model, everything in the structural model, and everything kind of broken out, and then even some comparisons against the point cloud to say, okay, we believe we got everything. We know we're not going to be 100% accurate, but having a deliverable that is essentially back to that old paper deliverable saying, here's kind of a report of everything you're getting, and then also doing a QC with tagging and marking all those things helps us find other things that maybe we wouldn't have caught if we're just only paying attention to the 3D model. So that kind of helps us get to that next level. It is certainly a bit more time, but we found it to be a really good QC exercise. And then the other one that we found is also, as we get towards the end, starting to do a clash detection against our own model. So you're like, well, heck, you modeled it all to the point cloud. Why would anything clash? Well, that's where we start to get back to maybe you straightened out a pipe or a column or things like that, where in the field, they actually are bent or they're deflecting or they're doing some different things that they do in the real world. But having that QC of saying, well, it makes no sense to run this at a conduit through this beam. They could not have built it that way. And then making some judgments on how to move that around. So that documentation and clash detection helps us find those things.
Yeah, and Jacob, I know you also had talked about an example where aside from QA/QCing the model, just QA/QCing the scan data before you start modeling. I thought that was a particularly good example. And that was I think you had an RTC scan with some tilt issues, and people had started modeling, right?
Yeah. So basically the registration on top of that, it ended up just going from probably about 2 feet from one side of the building to the other, and it was only like 100 feet long, and there's no way that was the realistic condition. And when we it was back when the RTC had its issues. They've fixed it, but you would get it and there'd be a tilt. Well, a slight tilt in one scan just compounds when you start registering with them the other scans. And this is where your coordinate systems come into play, and controls can actually help you out. But by the time we got it to my modeling team and they started modeling it, it came to me to QA/QC, and the building is just tilted. And it's like, wait, we got to realize that this is something that is not in real life before we get down this road. And I mean, it's I don't know. I guess it makes, we all have experience outside of the scanning coming into it. So we've seen that real life stuff that has really kind of allowed us to understand what it really does. The other thing too is QA/QC, we try really hard to make sure whoever's scanning in the field comes and does the registration too, because they understand what they saw and where they did it. It's not always the case, but it really helps on the QA/QC process when that person in the field is like, oh no, that room was sloped. We know we were on ramps and stuff. So
I'd even say, even if it ends up not being the same person, another thing that we've found is like just make sure one more person QCs it. Like sometimes you can sit there and register a project and you can slice stuff and cluster it and target and cloud and whatever, and you've looked at it for so long, just like you're doing anything, drafting, modeling, whatever. You look at it, you can sometimes get lost in the data. Having a third party, one more of your guys, your techs or whoever, come in and say, okay, I think this is good. Can you do a third, verification? Let them do some slicing, let them do some checking. Just because sometimes that happens where you've looked at it so much, you've perfected certain areas, but maybe something got off on another, you didn't triple check it. So one more set of eyes to just do a quick QC on your cloud. And again, a lot of people, they just look at reports, they look at targeting things, but one of the most simple things to do is take a slicing box, no matter what software you're in, slice it down to a really fine slice, both vertically or horizontally. Look at the floor and see if you have overlap in data. Look at a column and see if you see, 2 squares. That means something's off, So doing some of those slices.
While Matt's finishing there?
Yeah.
I was just to bring up the idea of rotation. I know we have another image there on rotation. And we actually just came across this on one of our projects this week. I have found that the rotation of the point cloud as the final deliverable is actually really darn critical. So this slide that Kelly has up here, just an example, when you're working with a larger structure like this, if this building is rotated even a smidgen, and I say a smidgen by like 0.1 degrees, over that distance is going to have a dire effect on things like those column lines down the line, and the end deliverable for those engineers and architects that are working with the building. It's going to really throw them for a loop. This particular building, it was on survey control and it was done really well. So the registration was good. The registration was great, but the final deliverable, that point cloud was tweaked just a little bit. So luckily, as we got into this, one of the first steps is to set up all the levels and grids on a project. Is if you can't set up a perfectly orthogonal grid, then something is tweaked a little bit, because that's one of those things that you can count on when they build these projects. Is there was a surveyor out there that was surveying column lines, so they should be pretty darn reliable for the building. And I'm not going to say they're always reliable, but mostly. If there's something you can count on, it would be, there's a big column line going all the way down the building, and this building could be 1,000 feet long. That should be the same column line going all the way down through the building. And you really want to nail that down before you let anybody loose in the model, because you'll have a lot of short walls that look pretty good for their locality, but then you get 100 feet down the building and it's supposed to be aligned in that same spot, in that same line, but now they're off by 6 inches or a foot. And so you're making all of these adjustments for just the smidgen of rotation. Yeah. So this is one of those things, even internally on our team, we try to get across over and over again, check the rotation at least 3 times, and export several positions into a recap in a Revit file or whatever CAD program you're working on, and check it again. Because if we get this wrong, now we're going to have a whole series of deliverables that are wrong and wrong again and wrong again to some extent. Some of it can be fudged, but not always.
And that's why QA/QCing that registration is so critical. And I think, the other thing I always drove into our teams was like, everybody I think is worried about translation in registrations. Like that's the thing people look for when they're cutting slices, right? They're looking for the, walls not being one solid group of lines and gaps. But those things do not compound over distance. If you're, 1 millimeter off, you're 1 millimeter off right there, and you're 1 millimeter off everywhere with that scan, and that's just not a big deal. Like that's well within tolerance. But if you're 0.1 degree off, and particularly you mentioned kind of critical tie points, right, Greg? If you're if you're 1/10 of a degree off at a critical tie point, and then the entire next wing of the building is tied to that, it will be 6 inches off by the time you get to the end of that wing, because rotational errors compound over distance, which is why they're so much more important to get right. Yeah. And that's why you want to have targets, and that's why you want to have survey control, so that you can check rotational errors, because you're not going to see rotational errors cutting slices in the point cloud, doing cloud-to-cloud registration. So,
I think on that note too, that could be one of those, we've talked about different registration methods, trying to combine, use at different points. A lot of times when there are those critical areas that, you know, you only get one door access, or you get stairs, or you get whatever, you know, using extra targeting in some of those complex areas to make sure that when you tie from one room to the other, you have some good targets as check shots instead of only relying on cloud to cloud, can be a good way to use hybrid registration of maybe you're doing cloud to cloud of the room on one side and the room on the other, but you've got some targets to help in the middle. Same with stairwells. If you put checkerboards in the stairwells at different levels and different doorways, then you can come in from that, you know, floor and tie into those targets. And now you can kind of mix when you're doing targeted and when you're doing the cloud to cloud.
Well, and like we always used to scan the exterior of buildings, even if it wasn't in the contract. Just because if we had an interior job, we scan the exterior because that gave us a way to check our overall accuracy. I want to, in the 5 minutes we've got left, I don't see too many questions about modeling, and we'll hit Q&A after and really dive through. But any kind of last thoughts on that modeling process? I mean, obviously there's tracing, there's manual extraction, automated extraction, there's QA/QC modeling. Are there any kind of leave the audience with a really important lesson about when you get into that point, you've got a point cloud, it's in Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever, it's time to model.
Yeah, Greg or Jacob, why don't we have you guys hit on that a little bit? What's your process look like when you're looking at taking a scan project and turning it back into your model? Obviously, we know there's the manual process. Sometimes automation helps. Sometimes it's you know, when do you decide, do you use automation or not? What are some of your thoughts and tips around the modeling?
Jacob, if you don't mind, I'll be real quick.
Go for it.
Your thoughts. Kelly, if you want to flip back to one of the, I guess the intensity image of, yeah, so there's a couple before that. So there's a color image, there's an intensity image. When you end up with projects like this, that look like this, and someone says, hey, we need all of these pipes and all this conduit modeled, you have, you know, certainly different options. The worst case is model all those manually. So trace it in the point cloud. It can be done, but it's going to take you a long time. There are quite a number of tools that will allow you to do manual feature extraction, which means a number of different ways where you can click on a couple of parts of the pipe and it will extract as much as it can see in one shot, but it's only going to get that one segment. So if you have it broken up, or you can see a little bit to the right, like conduits crossing over each other, those will be breaking points for all of those. You know, when you start with a large amount of objects like this, you definitely want to do automatic feature extraction. And so we've been using, you know, Edgewise forever. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this if you're already on this webinar, but this gives you such a better starting point and so much more accurate to let the algorithms do the vast majority of the work and really tackle this, and then come back and QC. And you're still going to have to do some manual feature extraction. You're still going to have to do some tracing, but at least like 70, 80% of that work is done, and it's already going to be way more accurate using the algorithm than your human interface is going to do. So, you know, that kind of breaking point is when you start to see these large amounts, you basically have to go for the automatic feature extraction in order to get it done in a timely fashion, unless you feel like modeling pipes for months on end. And most of us don't want to do it.
It's so much fun.
There's no way that you would stay sane being able to do that manually, going section at a time, just pulling it through and dragging the pipe a little bit more. The big tip that I would say during modeling is, one of the biggest things we do is when we get a file in there, Revit, or I'm sorry, a recap file into Revit, change the file to a single color. So go to an orange or a red, and then you can draw on top of it, but you really give yourself an idea of where you are versus what you're modeling. You can kind of see it just becomes a little bit more clear. And then Matt was even saying about going through sections at a time. If you're even in a floor plan, go ahead and cut your level about 1 foot up, get rid of the floor that's part of the scan, because that's just going to give you a bunch of points that you don't really need to focus on when you're creating plans. And then look at a small point section. It will allow you to understand exactly what the layout is and how to do it. we actually do that. And then also the same way we do it, we bring them into Navisworks to QA, QC them. We will turn the point cloud to a single color and then just pull a section box all the way through. And you'll be able to go 5 feet at a time and say, oh, look at this. This duct is, 2 feet over from where it's supposed to be. Let me go ahead and put that, make a point in there and get that fixed.
All right, well, we are at time, and so what I want to do is try and spend a couple minutes burning through some of these wonderful questions we've gotten. We've got oodles and oodles of them again. So Matt, I think you've been looking at them. If you want to start something, and we'll hang on for a few extra minutes, and then if you want to drop off, remember we're recording it. We'll get questions out to everybody, and then please join the LinkedIn group if you want to get more feedback and follow up. We'll post links to all the different videos through that LinkedIn group. So if you want to see the first video, join the LinkedIn group. We'll get that video.
And find each of us on there. You're welcome to connect and reach out to all of us. A couple questions I want to hit. One, just to see if there's any differences in answers. What types of targets do you guys use? One specific question was asking if we laminate targets and reuse them or use stickers. Do you guys do anything, what's your process there?
Go ahead, Greg.
So we generally will default to targets. We've bought, the ones that are 145 millimeters, they're rubber, so they will survive most anything. I don't really respect any of the cheap ones. I do believe you can make your own, you can 3D print your own, etc. I kind of went for the easy version and kind of went for the indestructible version. We do paper targets. We have laminated those before. We do have some laminated for more, I would say like humid conditions or things like that, where that paper kind of shrivels up over time, but generally we don't use those just because the extra little bit of glare you'll get off of them with the laser scanner. And then it's always easier, if you're just using the cheap paper targets and non-laminated, if you leave a few behind, big deal. You tell the client, if you see any of these, just throw them away. Those are kind of the easy boys. We also have some fun with laser scanning. Europe has a few magnetic anchors that you can use for the base of those spheres. So if you want to leave things on site and be able to kind of plug back into some coordinate systems really fast, you can leave those on site and basically screw them into concrete, those kinds of things. And we've also used some other kind of targeting with spheres for survey control. So there are methods to pick up the center of the spheres or swap it out with a prism, those kinds of things to have some of those permanent markers. So there's lots of combinations, but I think the spheres are the most useful out of any of them.
I definitely say same on those spheres. I think we have the same ones. If anybody's looking to look those up or find them, they're called flexi spheres. You can find them on Laser Scanning America, I believe. They're nice. They're rubber. The original ones we had, of course, over time, they all broke because they fell or hit concrete or whatever. Those flexi spheres are a nice rubber. You can clean them, reuse them. They don't get damaged. So, but they do cost a little more. Another, just because the laminated side, that I know someone's asking about that, and I think there is a good use case for it. The one time we've done quite a bit of that is in some industrial facilities where there's, you're trying to put up a bunch of targets, we're shooting in survey, and the faces of some of the objects are not going to work good for a sticker target. We would actually use the lamination and then use like a hot glue gun or a silicone and put it on the back of that and stick it to, steel columns and stuff, where that would stay better than using a sticker target. And then you can just rip those off as well. So I think those are probably more useful in more the industrial or dirty or those type of settings. Otherwise, we do default back to thumb stickers and a lot of flexi spheres, just really easy to move around, get good angles on.
I do want to throw out a pro tip on those paper targets though, and I've made these mistakes, is don't tape them up or wrap them around pipes, anything that's not planar as a surface. Don't hang them on mirrors or glass. You want something that has a solid surface behind it that will pick up essentially as a plane. So just a couple of things that to avoid if you are using the checkerboard paper targets.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'll just add that we just use Kelly's face. We print it about 100 times and paste it up. It works so well.
And conveniently, if you have darts, it makes for a fun game.
What program do you use to model in Revit?
I mean, we typically we're basically using Revit. We'll use the
Directly.
clear edge to do the feature extraction. But I mean, there's so many different tools. We're like a base, so we go through the Leica Register 360 into Revit, but we could go through Recap. We could use their CloudWorks. You know, it depends on what the project is and really
Yeah.
actually who the user is that's doing it, because we all have a little bit different workflow.
Yeah, and for both of you, another question would be, do we typically scan in color or black and white? What are some of the reasons you choose one or the other?
I think this one came up in the previous webinar too. For the most part, we default to black and white. When we need certain features, we do tend to do exteriors in color by default, just because we tend to get more materials, things like brick, and working out colors and making things look a little better, and also being able to tell what's like metal versus concrete versus other things. Sometimes you get that color helps you define those materials a little better. And that depends upon kind of the deliverable of the product. Or if there's mechanical rooms that are color coded for different pipes, or where we feel like it's going to help us pick those things up better, we will. But generally, we default to the faster time frame, how fast can we get on and off the site, and try to use black and white scans.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, we typically we default to color, but it's more of in case the person that isn't scanning or somebody different is registering, they have a better depiction of what's going on.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
you get lost in black and white if you're
Yeah.
not the one that understood it.
So what we do to supplement that is we typically have 360 photos as part of our deliverable, and we can get through a site, typically less than an hour, and take 360 photos and have that as a separate deliverable, so that it provides a nice, easy, functional deliverable to the client, so they can log into the website, see those 360 photos, and not have to worry about the high-end deliverable of the scan data and the
Do you have
issues.
one of the little thumb, the Ricos?
The Insta360s, the Ricos, we've got a few of them.
Cool.
But yeah, they are phenomenally helpful, and it helps us get around, doubling the time for color photography on a project site.
Yeah, so I would say those are good points for depending on the reason you would want to color it. If you actually want the point cloud to be colorized, then you'll have to do the colored scans. If you want some additional imagery, look at those 360 cameras, because they take 2 seconds instead of an additional 2 minutes per setup. We have some clients, for those of you that have seen scanning, there's a lot of options, whether you're using Leica or Faro, for some virtual deliveries. For Faro users, we use WebShare Cloud. We have a lot of clients, they like to be able to just walk through those different setups and pull some measurements and do annotations. So it really comes down to, are you using the data internally? Are you delivering the data to the client? What's going to be most helpful to them? And then are you trying to push it to a third application like that? Those are some reasons you might want to look into it. Quick question somebody had is, what's our LinkedIn group called? They're looking to connect so we can keep these discussions going.
Scan to BIM University.
And it is new. If you search for it, you should find it. I believe it has the logo that's been created for the group, so you can look for it there. Going back to quality and precision, a firm uses a Faro S70 scanner, which I think a couple of us also have. We typically do interior scanning to create existing plans. So Greg, I think that's what you're running as well. Often.
It is. We do have an S70. We've got a few different models of the Faro scanners, what we're typically using, outside of rentals for a specific purpose.
So when you look at like that interior floor plan we used as a good example earlier, what types of settings on that Faro scanner are you running in there?
So it's a interior office environment would be something like a 1/8 resolution. We keep it dialed down to the quality for 2x through all the testing and reading that we've done. Kind of an industry consensus that most of the time you don't need high quality and resampling of that data. It's not going to provide you any better results at that distance. But when we get to, if it's a smaller room, but it's got a lot of stainless steel and a lot of things in it that, you know, we want better scan data on it, we will dial it up and increase the scan times. So, you know, interior for smaller spaces, 1/8, then you start to dial that up for bigger and bigger interior spaces. So maybe 1/5 for a gymnasium, and then maybe 1/4 for like an industrial plant, you know, where you're seeing hundreds of feet.
Yeah, and again, even for the variation of sizes, you still want to consider what objects are you trying to pick up and how small are those, right? So if you get into a place that has a 10, 20, 30-foot ceiling, you know, that's great. Then are you trying to get, you know, electrical conduit that's 30 feet in the air? You know, those are the things that'll help you change how dense you need the data, which then comes into your scanner settings. I do have another question I want to hit, and I know we should probably wrap up shortly. One more question I would like to hit for both Greg and Jacob, either of you can answer, is how do you guys go about getting your scans onto a coordinate system? That was the question. And so I want to know, you know, do you bring in external surveyors? Do you do that internally? Do you, you know, pick points and align it based on models? They're kind of asking what's the actual process to take and align that to a coordinate system.
So on our end, we don't have any surveying services in house, and if you go down that line, there's a big I guess there's a fine line between if you're surveying or if you're scanning, and there's a lot of controversy of it right now. So we kind of make sure we say we're not surveyors, we don't survey. If you guys need that coordinate system as part of it, bring in the surveyor. If we have a coordinate that has already been put for us, what we can do is we'll put a sphere on it and make sure we understand where that is in our scan plan, and then we'll add it to it in the software. We're able to do that in the software.
For us, it depends. You know, every job is a little bit different, has a bit of a different scope. Generally speaking, I'd say for the larger jobs, when we start getting above somewhere between 100 to 150,000 square feet, I think survey control becomes necessary to kind of pull things together to a reasonable accuracy. But it also depends upon the use case as well. So understanding what the client is using it for, what their level of expectation is. But you know, when we start passing that threshold, we've hired surveyors, we've used total stations ourselves, done a number of things to minimize that. We generally ask for CAD files or Revit files to try to align to. We work with the client to establish, you know, what position on the building are we going to start with, and then we know you're hiring us for a reason to measure this because your drawings are currently not accurate. So we just kind of have to pick a baseline and say, here's our starting point, and everything else is going to be off from here. So we try to match that point. I mentioned before that rotation is really critical. That's where we try to really dial that in and say, okay, we're going to lay this out on this base point. We're going to get it rotated this way to match your expected layout on your floor plans. And then for survey control, we've taken the survey control, we've truncated coordinates to minimize that. We've done rotation so we get it perfectly north-south, you know, all of the above. But we try to take our scan data and move it specifically to that coordinate system for the deliverable first before doing any translations out to things like recap to work with the CAD files. And that's a really critical piece, because if you leave it on the original coordinate system with rotations and translations and everything else, things get really complicated once you start moving your data.
Yeah.
Different software programs don't work together and won't translate the same and have different modes of translating that data. So we try to get it for like that one common platform throughout all software platforms first before we do anything.
All right, I do have a question I'd like just everybody to answer when we're wrapping up. So before doing that, Kelly, do you have anything else?
No, I've been trying to crack through some of these and answer them in the questions panel for people that are still online. Stuff
Awesome.
get to. So it's
Yeah,
perfect.
and for those that have been unanswered, I do see some specific ones, people asking for some help and some suggestions. We will be sure to do some follow-up directly to you, as well as we'll record answers to these questions again and get that to the LinkedIn group. So you will get your questions answered. But what I would like to end with is actually a question just to all four of us, just because people always ask, what's something that you guys want to see change or come out? You know, if you got to look at a way to improve the field process, or you got a way to improve the modeling process, like what's something you would pick? Is it, you know, dense mobile collection? Is it automatic registration better? Is it, you know, flying indoors? Is it faster modeling? Like, what's something you want to see happen? Let's start with Kelly, actually. There you go.
And right in the middle of answering a question too.
I know.
So man, I think I'm super excited about kind of next generation. I mean, I'm always chasing the next generation sensors, but I'm super excited about, you know, where SLAM is going. It's not there yet, but it's so much easier for people to do. It's so much, you know, particularly for novices, people that aren't experienced with it. And right now, it's just the sensors in them aren't accurate enough to deliver accurate enough results.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but yeah, another generation or two of these sensors, MEMS-based solid state sensors, sorry, a lot of random tech there, but you know, these are the kind of things that are gonna, I think, just make SLAM viable for a lot more use cases. And that's gonna be super exciting, because then it's just gonna be, I feel like that's gonna make it just such a broader tool for people to use. And I think we're 3 or 4 years away from really seeing some of that stuff start to displace terrestrial scanning for certain use cases. So fingers crossed, super excited about it. And then, you know, putting them on drones and everything else just becomes a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go next. It's the software needs to catch up to the hardware side of it all, and it's not even necessarily the hardware, the scanners right now I'm talking about, but you know, our computer systems, our video cards, the amount of processing power that we can pack into a computer versus what the programs, you know, really utilize. Processing still takes a lot of time, and it's really, really painful if you have to plan out hours of processing time.
Yeah.
But they only use single thread, you know, processor. So it's like, why we need to get this worked out where it can go and utilize. I mean, the industry, the hardware industry is booming, and you can go get a what is the AMD thread rippers. Wow, if we could utilize that, we would be in such a better place with scanning.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think you buy the best computer, you're going to process this big scan job in 30 minutes. You're like, nope, it doesn't work that way. Different softwares can only use so much processing power from different portions of the computer that it's really a limitation between, yes, the computer hardware, but also the software you're using and how is it built, and different softwares use different portions. So that, I think all software fully utilizing the actual computer builds we have would be amazing. What about you, Greg?
So Kelly took my answer a little bit. I'd love to see the hardware catch up with the mobile mapping. I feel like it's a little more on the cusp. I've been kind of waiting for it for quite a while, and it's getting close. It's what I see is the scan density is not typically quite where we want it to model as much as we want to model, because then you start to lose a lot of use cases when you can't quite get the data that we're already getting out of terrestrial scanners. But I think artificial intelligence on the software side is going to kind of change the game, and it's going to take a little while. You know, ClearEdge is a great leader in this, you know, kind of thing where we're looking for things that can be extracted out of those point clouds, right? So if I say, hey, I want to find a light fixture, and I want to model that once and say, go throughout this entire thing and look for these light fixtures and just place another, you know, representation of that in a simpler format than a point cloud. But it's a hard nut to crack, and it's because, you know, in the design and construction industry, we always make things different. We don't pick out that same product and model the same thing over and over and over again. We're changing it constantly. That's what keeps us in business. That's the reason, we're out there measuring things because we build things differently all the time, and we have different use cases for it. So it's a hard nut to crack, but the more data that we collect over time, the software programs are going to be able to figure out more and more and automate more of these processes to give us closer to that easy button. It's not going to, remove the user, but
Yeah.
I think there are going to be lots of feature extraction apps to simplify this data for us and turn it into quick, easy to use data, really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for joining us. It's fun having you guys on. Like-minded people pushing the technology use cases. And even on that note, as things are coming out, new software's out, new hardware's out, something we try to hit on in these webinars and in the education is like, don't just buy the cheapest, newest thing that came out and run with it and think it's going to fix your problems. All of these are, there's difficult steps throughout the whole process. So, talk with somebody, get some consulting before you pick your scanner so you get the right one. Talk with some experts when you get into how to process it, how to model it, what computer do you need. And we're all here to kind of help and guide you guys along your journey as well. So thanks for joining us.
And we have another one coming up in 2 weeks, which will be our 301. It's kind of our advanced introductory class. So, kind of touching on a bunch of more advanced concepts. I think we're going to really dig into some cool registration tips and tricks. I know there's going to be some good modeling tips and tricks that we're going to be focused on in that class. So, if that's interesting, please come. The links will take you to, that you've seen on social media and everywhere else will take you to register for that 301 class as well. And, I think, if you guys have suggestions about other stuff that you'd like us to kind of dive into detail on, do more of a topical class, please by all means share that with Matt and I, with anybody, and let's share it on that LinkedIn group. And I think this is going to be a on demand, let's pull content. I've already had a ton of requests for a registration centric class talking about registration tips and tricks and hacks and stuff like that. So that's, I think, something that'll come down the pipe pretty soon. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today. It's been a blast having you here.
Thank you for the efforts of putting it on.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been good.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you guys, and we will talk to you all again shortly.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
one,
you guys.
See you on social media.